Okay, so Steele is asking here, this is crossed by Steele. Did you say that you were basing your learning that you think is higher? I'm not trying to insult you, mostly on personal experiences. Because, right, she's trying to be qualified. She's going to be one of these hybrid. Sometimes she's a fact expert because she investigated some aspects relating to this case. But other times she's going to be a gang expert, or she's going to be speaking generally. And there's been an issue in this trial over and over again where usually it's Love doing the questioning, lets this fact/gang expert witness blur the type of testimony they're giving. And then we have to ask for a curative instruction, right? I think we saw that with Dennis when he was recently on the stand. So Steele's trying to get at what is actually your expert testimony versus coming from personal experience. So the court, your Love objects. The court says, hold on, this is Glanville, you guys. I'm going to overrule that objection. She can answer that. The witness, I wouldn't say personal. It's my work experience. It's my work experience with YSL that I think affords me the knowledge base and the ability to understand the gang. Of course, I take training and I keep taking training. I can listen to somebody teach on YSL if I were to. Mr. Steele, I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry. I could keep taking training. I could take courses on YSL. What courses? But I think my experience, compounded with the training that I've had, is what makes me such an expert on this gang, even as to where if you listen to the wiretap, I think the members of the gang consider me an expert on the gang. All right, so I'm going to ask you all about that. Sure, but I think that you answered directly, yes, it's mostly your personal experience. Then I want to get into other things that you said you did. Miss Love, objection as to mischaracterization. Mr. Steele, I think that is what she just said, and if she didn't, she can correct it. The witness, I would say it's both. It's a combination of both. Both are equally as important. But I think that what I have that is different, that somebody just attends training, is my experience with the defendants, the Cleveland Avenue community, the rival gang, things of that nature. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has talked to Mr. Bennett, that's Lucci. Not everybody has interacted with members of YFN. So a lot of people don't have that, and I think that is something that gives me an edge on top of my training. By Mr. Steele. Let's start right there. Mr. Bennett. Correct. You were talking about a performer known as YFN Lucci. Is correct. Is that fair to say? Okay. When you spoke with Mr. Bennett, as you just said, did he give you any meaningful information about YSL? No. The court. Can we pause just 1 second, Mr. Steele? Sure. Okay, go ahead, sir. Thank you. So when you say that you have, a certain benefit because you spoke with Mr. Bennett, but then you said you didn't discuss anything about YSL, how's it a benefit? How do you characterize it as a benefit? I mean, I've met Mr. Bennett. I've had a chance to look at his tattoos. I've had things like, what I'm saying is, I've had experiences that the average officer or investigator may not have had. I've interviewed members of YFN. I've listened to jail calls. I've reviewed phone extractions of YFN. So I see it from both sides. It's kind of a rare thing. You might find it with Tyrone Dennis, Kim Underwood, and Mark Belknap. But outside of that, I don't know if you're going to have many people that have that. So she's saying the only other people that are having the same expertise as her are the same people that she shouted out previously for being who she came up under, her mentors. She said, I came up under the guidance of Kimberly Underwood, Mark Belknap, and Tyrone Dennis, who are all well-versed in the YSL and YFN world. So Steele, who did you interview other than Mr. Bennett, who you say is affiliated with YFN, dealing with YSL? Sure, I sat in on the interview with Mr. Glass on the YFN indictment, and I want to say Mr. Boyd, and I would have to think about the others. Well, with Mr. Glass and or Mr. Boyd, and separate them if you need to when you answer the question, did they give you anything that you were using about YSL? I don't want to misspeak. That was in 2020. I can't remember. That's fine. And remember, this is October of 2023. Now, you did say that you met with 6 co-indictees on this case, YSL case. In my course of a 10-year career, I have met, whether it be briefly or during an arrest by another unit or something like that, I've encountered them, yes. We're going to go one at a time, and I'm assuming just so we can move on. Mr. Stillwell is one of them, or Mr. Jackson, correct? And you already answered that that was nothing of substance about YSL. And then Viverito says, I guess if you want to phrase it that way, but my interactions with him and him being evasive and things of that nature, it's hard to describe. When you've worked in this field for so long and around these people, it's hard to describe. I can pick up on certain things that it's hard to explain. Okay, well, now is your opportunity. And that's kind of the whole point of an expert witness, is to explain things to the jury so the jury can understand. But she's saying she can't explain the things that make her have an expertise that nobody else can testify to. So, so Steele says, okay, well, now is your opportunity, but I'm going to move on to Mr. Garlington and Mr. Mender, only because I think that we addressed them. I'm assuming they are 3 of the 6. So this is where we're picking up where we broke off yesterday to watch court. Correct. And it's going to be the same answers you gave before. Correct. None of them were, my word would be forthcoming. You said truthful or something. Correct? Correct. Who were the other 3 members who were indicted according to you? I met with Mr. Sumlin after his arrest. And that was a recorded interview that we have, if you are familiar. It is. Are you familiar with the discovery in this case? Some of it. Okay, Mr. Sumlin. Anything outside of the recording? No, not outside the recording. Okay, did he give you any insight into YSL that you were using today before the Honorable Judge Glanville? He did give a good bit of information during that interview. Like what? He explained his role in the gang, that he was out there kind of on Cleveland, I believe, and I don't want to misspeak because I haven't listened to that interview in quite a while. He explained, I guess, they were having some issues on Cleveland Avenue, and he said that Mr. Williams had rented them a house, I think on Brown's Mill, that they referred to as the Web, so that they would not be shot at, and they would have some shelter from some sort of violence out there. Steele. Did he actually say that Mr. Williams, according to him, bought a home so that if people didn't have a place to stay, they could stay there? Viverito. It wasn't bought. I believe my research into that property was that it was rented, and the inside had been marked with all types of YSL graffiti from body cam that I viewed from the place when it got shot up. I don't know if he said Mr. Williams, but I know that I would have to listen to the interview again. I don't want to misspeak or say the wrong thing, but I know it was that Mr. Williams had either provided them a home, I think it was the one on Brown's Mill that had previously been shot up, that, I'm sorry, go ahead. It's okay. No. They were having issues on Cleveland Avenue, and he provided a home for them. Steele, do you have any evidence besides Mr. Sumlin's recordation of that interview that Mr. Williams actually rented, I guess, that home? Other than the fact that it was frequented by YSL members and the inside was covered in YSL graffiti and appeared to be a hub for drug sales consistent with the gang's activities, no. As far as seeing a lease or anything, no. Did anyone else corroborate Mr. Sumlin's statement about that web house, as you called it? I think the corroboration would be, Steele, that Mr. Williams rented it, owned it. I think you said owned, but regardless. Viverito, no, I mean, there were other houses in the neighborhood that the gang would frequent, that it was my understanding that Mr. Williams provided for them. Steele, and how did you get that information, that understanding? Miss Love, Your Honor, I object to the line of questioning that goes beyond the purpose for this hearing itself. The court, yeah, I'll sustain. Steele, can I ask you to consider something? Glanville, what is it? Steele, Investigator Viverito I'm asking her based upon, she said she's interviewed and met with 6 co-indictees. I'm asking her what she learned so you can make a foundation. There has to be 2 things. Is it reliable? It has to be reliable information. And is it information that rises to the level of expertise, where you would have to know what it relies upon? Nobody said anything that of the specifics. It was just, I met with Mr. Jackson, Mr. Garlington, and Mr. Mender. We find out afterwards there was nothing of substance. The court, Miss Love, anything before I rule? Miss Love, Your Honor, questioning the witness regarding the information she obtained that led her to draw various conclusions is a different matter than fishing for information regarding Mr. Williams' client, Mr. Steele's client in particular specifically. One is an inquiry into the basis for opinions that she may share. Another is, from our perspective, just an effort to do deeper discovery dives. Mr. Steele, I'm not fishing for anything. I'm asking specifically her basis of knowledge. The court, but that may be later, Mr. Steele, but in terms of the basis for whether or not she's going to qualify under Daubert, I'm going to sustain the state's objection at this point. Steele, okay. So Steele continues his questioning here. And let me make sure I have my... All right, I do still have law and crime open. No action over there. Nothing happening just yet there. And then Steele says, with regards to, so that's 4 people. Who are the other 2 co-indictees? I think I met Mr. Stevens, so that's Tick, Slug, Trontavia Stevens. He probably does not remember. It was a very long time ago during an arrest somewhere in Zone 3. There was no dialogue with him. It's just encountering him actually out there in Zone 3. So you didn't really meet with Tick. So you really met with 5. Okay, so then Viverito also says, and I want to say Mr. Sledge is the last one. I would have to look at the list of indictees because not everybody is here today. And again, Mr. Sledge would have been the same thing, just during an arrest, seeing him out there. Steele, all right. Now, have you ever gone to or performed or taught any training specifically about YSL outside of the potential wiretap information, which we'll get into? No, I have not taught any training on YSL. Steele, and have you ever been to any training specifically focused on YSL that you did not, that I would like you to tell us about? Viverito, I believe, and I don't remember it well because it was well before this investigation, that during one of the Georgia Gang Investigators Association conferences, I believe it was a summer conference, there was a block on, an instructive block on YSL. Steele, you don't recall it to this day as you sit here today? Unintelligible court reporter says, could you say those names slower, please? The witness, I'm sorry, Mark Belknap and J.P. Miller were the instructors. As much of the content I can't, it was a while ago. By Mr. Steele. A while is 5 years, 2 years? Viverito, a couple years. I can't remember which conference it was. Steele, well, you are clearly not using that today then, are you? Steele said, Viverito says no. With regards to, you talked about, based upon the questioning by the honorable prosecutor, gangs and the music industry. Do you remember those type of questions? I do. Can you explain what you were trying to, or you did maybe say? What does it mean when you say gangs and the music industry? What were you referring to? That's all it was, gangs in the music industry? Viverito, I think Miss Love said, had I ever been familiar with that? Steele, tell us about that. Viverito, often, and I spoke with some of my coworkers the other night. Out of all the gang cases we have right now, it's very hard to find one where a rapper or music isn't tied into it. It's very common nowadays. But, according to Dennis, we don't chase the music. It could be set up as a front. I've had cases in the past where a gentleman was fronting as a CEO of a record label that didn't have any artists or trying to get a record label off the ground and was indeed trafficking heroin. And I was able to get him almost 10 keys of heroin. So it's a common practice. You'll see it goes all the way back to BMS. They were a drug trafficking organization. I think maybe the court transcriptionist got this wrong. Maybe Weaver heard S instead of F. They were a drug trafficking organization and a gang that masqueraded as a music label to launder their money, something similar to the mob in New York with Waste Management if you watch The Sopranos. Waste Management, things of that nature. Are you telling the court based on your experience that YSL is similar to the Waste Management in New York mafia example? Miss Love, objection, Your Honor. The court, I'll overrule that. The witness, it's similar in the fact that it's used as a means to further the gang. By Steele. And talk in specifics, not the general. I mean the money, the power, the reputation. It's all for the gang. There are 2 ways the gangs get respect. There's money and there's violence. And the music and the record label, I think, helps with both. Steele, the record label of YSL is what you're saying? Viverito, correct. Okay, what is it helping with? You are saying it's helping with both. What is YSL helping with, the record label? Providing money and also the gang's hyper-violent reputation. And have you studied money, following money like you're referring to now? YSL giving money from the record label to a criminal activity? Well, I think it's, I don't know correct me if I'm wrong. It's your assertion that Mr. Williams gets his money from the record label. And then Mr. Williams pays members of I've seen phone dumps where the members of the gang are requesting money from Mr. Williams, often for lawyers, for all types of things. If you look through phone dumps, they are asking him for cash apps for money, things of that nature. So if Mr. Williams is getting his money from the record label and providing it to the members of the gang, it provides the gang money. Steele, and that's what you're referring to? How about for the money? Ms. Viverito, I mean, I wouldn't lock myself into this, The only thing, I haven't taken a forensic, I'm not an accountant. I haven't taken a forensic dive into the money. But you see, and it's my experience from jail calls I've listened to, that when individuals, including Mr. Jackson and Mr. Nichols, get locked up for a murder, they are looking for a lawyer to be sent down to the jail immediately, and they are looking for Mr. Williams to do it. So, and then Viverito says, so you are not cheap. I'm sure Mr. Harvey's not cheap. There has to be funds to get that done. Mr. Harvey, oh, how wrong you can be. The witness, supposed funds, Mr. Harvey. The court, is that an objection? Viverito, but I know you two are some of the best lawyers here, but the demands are made. When people go to jail, the demands are made for Mr. Williams to send lawyers down. I mean, and that means Mr. Williams isn't in charge if you're using the word demand, right? This is someone that's got experience testifying on the stand, both as a cop and probably a gang expert in another case, maybe, who knows. You're used to testifying as an expert witness. So when you choose to use a word like, but the demands were made for Mr. Williams to send lawyers down, you're trying to make it sound nefarious, but at the same time, you're crossing your signals here because you're trying to say that Mr. Williams is the one with the calling all the shots, running everything, running the waste management cover-up. So why would someone be making demands of him? Why would his own people be making demands of him if he's calling the shots? All because you just want to use the word demand here to make it spicy. So, when you say you've never done an audit, a deep dive audit, has anyone tried to follow the money that you are relying upon here when you testify to that before the Honorable Judge Glanville? That, I don't know. You said power. The other part is power and reputation. I think are 3, but then you said 2. What is the power that you're talking about? The power, the reputation, the violence. I mean, we have spoken to victims' families, and I want to be clear, it sounds like this is 2023, so she could be watching the show Power, and like that main theme song for one of the series, the money, the power, respect, like what are the things that they say in that song? So I'm just thinking of the song. We have Dennis learning things from magazines and movies. Viverito could have been watching Power. You know, it seemed like she tried to mention BMF earlier, and I don't know if she said BMS or if the court reporter transcribed it incorrectly. But, you know, here, yeah, money, power, respect. Like, maybe she's just learning from the song, the theme song. The power, the reputation, the violence. I mean, we have spoken to victims' family where they say, how can you harm somebody and put it in a song and re-victimize us? So when you get the music, he's tied to the music and the lyrics, and you play these songs where the crimes are described in particularity. It furthers the violent reputation of the gang. Not only can I commit this crime, not only can I do it, but I can rap about it, and I can make money off of it. And people can sing along all over the world about this crime I committed, whether they know what they are singing along to or not. And that you're saying in your experience is something that you take into consideration? It is. I've had cases where children will shoot another child dead in Atlanta. We heard this speech from Underwood. Same speech from Underwood. Underwood learned from Viverito. It is. I've had cases where children will shoot another child in Atlanta and then go make a rap song about it, in particularity within hours, and release that with a post of the kid's dead body on there. So it's autobiographical. And the response has to be, even once you put that out there, like, Mr. Steele, if you and I are in a room and I slap you, me and you know about it and maybe a few other people. You put a song out, everybody knows it, and it gets played, it goes viral. And then the response to that disrespect has to be just as public and just as powerful. Otherwise, someone's ego is bruised. This sounds like she listened to like a Quando Rondo interview where he's like, you know, people will say, like, you let someone slap you and disrespect you, why don't you go get your get back? And he's like, but what would I look like 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, if I get locked up for trying to get some get back? People are then 30 years later are going to say I'm stupid for trying to shoot somebody because they slapped me. Right? So this is like, I feel like I can just picture Viverito watching these interviews and thinking that that's her gang research. Because this is very similar to me to a Quando Rondo example. And then the response to that disrespect has to be just as public and just as powerful. Otherwise, someone's ego's bruised. So the music, I could sit here all day and talk to you about the music aspect of it, but the music equals power and lets the gang's violent reputation activities carry on. Have you ever been to any training or taught any training about what you are saying now about music? I don't believe so. Do you know of any peer-reviewed or scholarly journals or articles or books about this? I think there were a few articles that I found that I really couldn't find access to, but I didn't see the titles of the articles showing that rap music or drill music correlates to, and this is all Underwood. This is like, we just had Underwood on the stand, you guys. And this is just me paraphrasing what I've seen, correlates to an increase in violence, or sometimes one article I saw or headline that I saw that was interesting. Granted, I didn't get to read the whole article, was that on days when rap music records are released, there's a spike in violent crime. So there are articles. I just have not had the opportunity to read them. This is a Daubert hearing. Oh my gosh. This is a Daubert hearing. And this is from Amira. This is from Marissa Viverito's Daubert hearing in October of 2023. So right before trial started. Yeah, right. Are there not like releases every day? Are they trying to say that there's like an October jump in crimes because, there's a bunch of October drops? Like, oh my gosh. Crazy. And not for nothing, but like summer spikes in violence because people go outside. A lot of people try to drop summer hits too. So like correlation is not causation, first of all. Second of all, read the damn articles. Holy moly. Oh my gosh. We didn't even read the information. At least Dennis read the magazines. So there are articles. I just have not had the opportunity to read them. My time, I think, as little time as I do have, is better spent reviewing phone dumps and jail calls and things. So this is investigative and not gang expert work then. And they're going to try to blend her fact testimony as expert testimony. And things of that nature are real time and involve the people I'm actually dealing with. Steele, an understanding you didn't read them and you are correct, just going off a headline. Did any of those reports deal with YSL? I don't believe so. Okay, now you stated that you had daily, approximately, I think you said daily exposure to gang members, alliances, colors, territories, things like that. Do you remember giving that type of testimony? Correct. Is that similar to what you're saying now? You're listening to jail calls, and I don't want to limit you. No, it's jail calls, it's phone dumps, it's surveillance video. Like I said, there's a camera out on Cleveland Avenue. It was part of Mr. Greer's probation revocation. So Greer, is it Quantavious Greer, Unfunk? That's Jeffrey Williams' brother. He was indicted. He ended up messing up. His probation was revoked. So he's in custody currently. I kind of utilize everything that's available to us. We might go out actually and sit on Cleveland Avenue and observe what's going on unbeknownst to the people operating out there. So in some form or fashion, I'm interacting with somebody almost daily. That's not really interacting if they're unbeknownst to the other person. This paragraph is contradictory. Let's read this again. We might go out actually and sit on Cleveland Avenue and observe what's going on unbeknownst to the people operating out there. So in some form or fashion, I'm interacting with somebody almost daily. What? Stop. Okay, Steele says, or observing somebody. Is that what you were saying? Observing, yeah. Interacting would be like what we're doing now. Okay. Oh my gosh. This is why you can't try to beef up yourself like with your words. If you beef up your words, you're going to make yourself sound stupid. Just speak plainly. She says, interacting would be something like we're doing now. Okay. Like, oops. Observing or encountering gang members in some form or fashion, whether it be jail calls, reviewing phone extractions, observing them in their natural habitat out there on Cleveland Avenue. Oh my God, why would you word it that way? Observing them in their natural habitat out there on Cleveland Avenue. Somebody play Love's opening statement with the Jungle Book. What the heck is this? Observing them in their natural habitat out there on Cleveland Avenue, like Thorpe on the playground. Looking at their graffiti that is now out there on the park. Oh my gosh. Yeah, at this point we can call her Marissa Dorito. That's what the closed captions are going to call her. You know how the closed captions be. This is crazy. You're observing them unbeknownst to the people, observing them in their natural habitat. You are asked to clear up your misspeak for trying to blend observe as being an interaction. So you can pick up experience interacting with these people because that's the basis of your unique experience. Observing them unbeknownst, observing them in their natural habitat. This sounds like praying. Like, oh my gosh. Right, is this a zoo? Sounds stupid, sounds dumb. Oh my gosh. Let's see what else we get. When you said that the 6 criteria of the Atlanta Police Department currently, I believe that is what you're talking about. Correct. How long has that been the criteria, approximately, if you can tell us? That I don't know. I've been there since February, so I know at least since February, but probably longer. I just don't want to misspeak on that. I understand. In February of this year? Correct. And who came up with that criteria, if you know? I believe, according to investigator Belknap, it was criteria developed out in California, and it's used with departments throughout the country. Do you know how many departments use that versus something else? I do not. You said the first criteria I wrote down is a self-admission. Correct. That means if you hear me say, I'm a member of the gang, the Steele Law Firm. Correct. That would be my self-admission. Okay. And that is during the course of some sort of interview, interrogation, arrest, something job related, I assume. Could be. It could be a published video of someone proclaiming themselves the founder or leader of a gang. It could be a cell phone dump where they are proclaiming their membership in a gang. What if it's false? How do you determine something that is a false statement versus a true confession? How is that done? Sure. I weigh that against, I never take anything. Remember this, guys. Remember this line. Remember this line. Sure. I weigh that against, I never take anything at face value from anybody. So I kind of go and conduct my own investigation. I will look at when people have been arrested, who they've been arrested with, where they've been arrested, their jail calls, their phone extractions, their clothing, the way they dress, their alliances, things of that nature. So I never just use that as, okay, so they said it, so it's true. I would like to do that, but I'm more comfortable if I can make sure and do the extra work to make sure that it's true. So hold on to this, guys. Steele. And then reliable informant. What deems it reliable? Somebody of past tested reliability. So somebody that we may have used before that we know is truthful and reliable. Has given us reliable information in the past. There's some custom emojis that would make a lot of sense for you guys to be dropping in the chat right now. Certain reliable person. Is that somebody who is actually ranked, recorded as a confidential source? Doesn't have to be, no. So it's just law enforcement's determination? Correct. No criteria that you know about? Not that I know of. I know it's past reliability, somebody that we deem reliable. And then an unknown informant is number 3, I wrote down. But then there's corroboration. Correct. So somebody that I don't know in Cleveland might, for example, might say something, and I don't know this person well, and we have never gotten information from them before, but they may have given some information that I can go back and validate on my own. So they say Brian Steele is part of some criminal street gang, right? And then you would go investigate Brian Steele. No, I wouldn't go and launch an investigation. I would kind of just vet that information first before investigating, but it's important to corroborate the information, like the standard operating procedure says, SOP. How much corroboration? What are we talking about? Who determines, yep, this is corroborated unknown informant? I guess it would be up to the investigator. I like to err on the side of caution and be extra sure. And extra sure is, in the eyes of the officer making the determination, I believe so. So there's really not, I understand the 6 points, but to your understanding, since February, there is really not a set requirement where you have to reach this bar. You have to corroborate it with 3 different criteria. It's just whatever corroboration that investigator, you or someone else might not be as thorough as you, deems to be appropriate. I guess I don't have the whole standard operating procedure in front of me, but I know that's the third criteria, how the third criteria reads, the independent corroboration. Where is the standard operating procedure? I would guess it's in the policy and procedures manual of the Atlanta Police Department. Is that something, if the judge orders it, you can also provide? I don't know if that can come from me. That might have to come from the law department or wherever they do that, however they do that. That might be out of my. Okay, the next one is 4. Lives in, this is my wording, my writing, lives in a gang-infested area. You may not have said that, but something like that. No, frequents a known, and I'm not speaking verbatim from but frequents known gang areas or territories, the natural habitat, and adopts a style of dress and other identifiers, the affect, the hand signals, things of that nature. What is a gang? You just said it. Gang infested is what I say. But what is that area? How do you deem something gang infested versus not gang infested? Miss Love, Your Honor, I object to the use of infested since the witness has not testified in that manner. The court, yeah, I'll sustain the objection. The witness, I don't think that we deem it. I objected, so, Mr. Steele, whatever word you put to it, on the area. Your Honor, I object, and I ask the question be clarified before Glanville. Clarify the question, Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, sure. It's the same question, except remove the word infested and put an area. Oh, we don't determine those areas. The members of the gang determine those areas. So the members of the gang will post out there. They'll take over stores out there. For instance, if you go to either, is this the Mungtung Baggy Shop, 151? If you go to either 151 or 221 Cleveland, you'll see they've essentially taken over those gas stations. You'll see where the crimes commit, where the gang regularly can be found. I know for those poor kids out there on Cleveland Avenue Park, it's littered with graffiti all over the place about Quentin Porter and YSL and things of that nature. So I use all of those factors. When they hold Cleveland Avenue Day and things of that nature out there where all the gang members congregate, there's an area where they feel safe. So that's kind of how we make the determination about an area. And then again, you go through police reports and see where these crimes occur. Are they victims out there? Are they frequently out there? Are they frequently getting arrested at these locations? When search warrants are being done at houses and things of that nature? Are YSL members being found in these locations? It's a bunch of factors you look at. Steele, couldn't a person, though, associate? They have friends there in that area. They have the tattoo. What type of tattoos are you talking about? Could be different ones. YSL, slime, slat, the snake, blood tattoos. There's several different ones. Any or all of those? Uh-huh. What is wrong with somebody having those tattoos, associating in that area with other people that have been self-admitted gang members? Why does that make that person, though? I mean, I didn't write the criteria. That's the criteria. Okay, number 5 is arrest. I wrote down arrest while committing a criminal street gang, some criminal street gang activity with other gang members. Is that correct? It's self-explanatory? Correct. And then the last one is I wrote a strong association with a gang. What is that? Is that number 6? Yep. So remember, when she was on direct, she said, prongs, criteria 1 through 5. If you meet any one of these, we can say that, you're probably a gang member. That's our criteria. Any one of those 5. Number 6 is a little different. Number 6 is basically, if there's something there, you don't really meet the other criteria. Number 6 gives us the route to call you an associate. So Steele's going to probe on that a little bit here. What is that? What is number 6? Yeah. If they have a strong relationship and ties to the gang, but they don't meet any of the 5 criteria, they don't rise to the level of the 5 previous criteria, they are an associate of the gang. Steele. Investigator Viverito, in your understanding and experience, is a lot of the APD criteria left up to the judgment of the individual investigator, or is there some sort of peer review? These are my words. Peer review to determine the conclusion. No, this person doesn't fit 1 through 6, or this person does. I mean, I think the investigator can make that call, but there are supervisors that review reports and cases and sign off on search warrants, things of that nature. Is there anything that Judge Glanville, he's going to be asked, I assume, for certain demarcations of your potential expertise? Is there anything, if let's say I challenge it, that you can tell me? Here is the definitive mark. You have to get above these many points on 1 through 6. Or is it just really the discretion of the person looking at it? Miss Love, objection as to the form of the question. I mean, I understood it. The court also sustained the question. Let me ask it again. 1 through 6, you need one of them, I think you told me. 1 through 5, you need one to be considered a member of the gang. And if you don't meet any of those, but you do show a close relationship to the gang, like oftentimes females are deemed, males too, but females are often deemed associates. And that would be the associate 6? Yes. And the statute allows either a member or associate. Correct. So my question is, you need one of those 6. Correct. And this is a judgment call for the investigator. Correct. I'm not saying you will be, but if you are allowed to testify as to tattoos, graffiti, words, dress, clothing, jewelry, things that you mentioned earlier, correct. If a jury was armed with that information, then what happens? A jury then makes a determination whether the person is in the Miss Love objection. Court, don't answer that. That is not a proper question, Mr. Steele, for her. Mr. Steele, I think it goes to Daubert on whether it assists the jurors. The court, I'm going to make that determination. Steele, one more time. Glanville, I'm going to make that determination, right? Correct. You are the gatekeeper. The court, so she doesn't need to answer that question. Steele, this sharing of information weekly or bi-weekly with others and learning from others in law enforcement, do you remember something like that? Correct. Who were you? I'm assuming if you were there, who are you meeting with or learning from or teaching? We meet weekly at the Atlanta Police Department, and it's several units. There's usually a representative from each unit, and we discuss crimes that take place throughout the past week that may or may not have a gang-related element to them. And we also discuss high-level, conflicts throughout the city. So when you say separate divisions, are you talking about larceny? Typically burglary, aggravated assault, robbery, auto theft, homicide. There will be pretty much a representative from each person in the room. So this is not just gang-related, but it could go into gangs. That is what I hear you saying. It's to go over the incidents that occurred over the past week that may have a tie to gang activity. So we evaluate them to see if there's a gang element or there's a possible gang element that needs to be evaluated. Things of that nature, to be able to stay on top of rising conflicts throughout the city. And who is in your division, if anyone? I know they created a new position for you, and congratulations. Thank you. Who else is with you at these meetings on your side, or are you solo? The supervisors from the gang unit attend. Our major attends. Sometimes the deputy chief will attend. I'm asking you who they are. So, Major Woolfolk, Deputy Chief Hampton, Lieutenant Jones, Sergeant Henderson, Sergeant Kleinhens, and then depending on what gang has had an incident that week, the investigator that's knowledgeable on that particular gang will attend the meeting to provide some insight and help with the other units. How many total times have you been qualified and accepted as an expert in YSL gang? None. I couldn't hear you. None. I feel like Steele heard her. Steele just had her say it twice. How many times total have you been accepted as an expert in, I'll just say gangs? None. She is teaching the courses. When you said you investigated approximately, you said around give or take, so I'm not wetting this number, but 25 cases. Is that just the Fulton County DA's office, or does that go back to when you were with the community supervision? If we go back to community supervision, it's going to be a lot more, because I would get reached out to constantly for help on investigations. But as far as cases that I helped work up for trial while at the Fulton County DA's office, and RICO indictments that I worked up or was part of at the GBI Gang Task Force, as well as the Fulton County District Attorney, that's cumulative of that. Steele, I'm gaining your experience. It sounds like most of it, I'm using your words, is work experience that you use then to prosecute cases or understand how to prosecute cases or understand how to investigate cases. Is that fair to say? No, like I told Mr. Harvey, I have the training basis of it. What my experience and the experiences that I have been afforded are just kind of like a bonus that gives me more of an edge. And those are the experiences that we talked about already? Correct. The wiretap, listening to, Mr. Harvey calculated at like 8,000 calls for us, and thousands of jail calls, phone extractions. I mean, some of these phone extractions have information that you would never gather just speaking to somebody or learn in a training. So watching video visits from the jail have proven very interesting. Jail text messages, like I said, watching hours and hours of YouTube videos and documentations and listening to music and lyrics and things of that nature. And again, I worked on the YFN case, so kind of getting a full understanding of the conflict from both sides. So guys, you heard it here. You can watch YouTube videos and become an expert. Now, in this case, the Honorable Court probably knows, based upon the previous wiretap motion and your testimony today, you were deemed, or at least yourself, a lead investigator on part of this indictment that we have here that is going to trial. Correct. And you were not involved, I believe, in let's say 2015, 2016, 2017, but you got more involved more recently with Mr. Drinks, Mr. Bennett, and the like. And if I'm wrong, correct me. No, like I said, in 2020, we had a flare-up between YFN and some of the Crips that are associated with YSL. It was an extremely violent summer. I worked that investigation. And then I know I worked some armed robberies related to this group with the armed robbery investigator and helped out with that. So there are several cases that I've had my hands on that aren't necessarily, and I'm not necessarily the lead investigator, but I've helped. The Georgia Gang Investigator Association? Yes, I think I said that right. Is that, if you know, is that something that's in most states? All states, do you know? I think most states have some form of gang invests. I think New Jersey does. I'm not sure of all the states that do. I know several states do, though, and they put on conferences and trainings. Do you know if it's any type of accreditation? Are you familiar with anything like that? That I'm not sure of. And can anybody go learn, or is it closed to law enforcement? I believe it's closed to law enforcement and prosecutors' offices. So it's completely chambered off. Is there any type of peer-reviewed articles that come out of this, or any type of resource that comes out of this that is then verified by other? I'm not sure. I know they provide certifications, the basic and intermediate certifications at these conferences and trainings, but other than that, I'm not sure. And you have a certificate, I believe you said, for the basic and intermediate, correct? And how do you get a basic? Well, let's take them separately if you don't mind, if they're different. Sure. But if they're the same, you can just say they're the same. No, they're different. Okay, basic and then do intermediate second. Basic is what it sounds like, basic introduction to gangs, identifiers, things of that nature. But how do you get it? What makes you, hey, Viverito, you sit for the course with the instructions, and at the end you take a practical. It's not a participation. You have to pass the test, the exam at the end. And is that exam something that the Honorable Mr. Harvey asked you about? Is that what you said you gave to the prosecutor? No, I think he was asking about my course that I teach. Mr. Steele, well, I would like to see it all, Your Honor. I don't know if there's any, Miss Love. Your Honor, the court, all being what? Mr. Steele, anything taught at these seminars that Investigator Viverito said that she has, testified she was certified. I don't know what goes on there. I would like to see the documents. The court, you may like to see it, but you may not be able to get it. It may be law enforcement sensitive, and it may fall into some other issues as to why it can't be disclosed. Has the state received any of this in discovery? Miss Love, no, Your Honor, we don't receive those materials. The court, Mr. Steele, they might. I'll tell you like I told Mr. Harvey, and I think you know this with experts. With experts, it's a different. If you then qualify them as an expert, then some of these materials under 704 would, in fact, be required to be turned over or made available. So it's not that I won't give them to you. It's just not now. And also, some of these materials may be, they may have some other issues with disclosure. So we'll kind of take that up as needed on that, okay? Mr. Steele, well, I'd like to see them, but I hear what you say. The court, and also the witness did not testify from those documents or refer to them before she came to testify or in court. So there's not a basis for me to require the state to do this, to at this point in time turn them over to you. Mr. Steele, okay, I would like to see them because it was mentioned and certified. So you may not, you may strike it, but you may use that in your decision as to, in terms of what, sir, I'm sorry, in your decision as the gatekeeper. In terms of what specifically, I apologize. That's fine. To say Investigator Viverito does pass Daubert and therefore can testify. I don't really know. I hear what she says. I just would like to see the items. She's passed the test. She took a test and passed it and became basic. She's about to talk about intermediate. My question to the court is, that may be something that is very in-depth. That may be something that is not in-depth. And I would like to have the court educated on what we're talking about. The court, I think I'm okay, Mr. Steele, at this point in time. I don't think I need that in order for me to make a decision at this point. Mr. Steele, I understand. Okay. I understand what you said. It's over objection. So, Mr. Steele, intermediate, Viverito. Intermediate is the follow-up course after the basic course, and it gets a little bit more advanced. It's been a minute since I've taken it, I guess, some case law. It gets into the gang statute, how to apply it, and at the end, again, you do a practical, and it's tougher than the basic one. And again, you have to pass the test at the end, and it will be on your post transcript as having passed the exam if you pass. The court. Can you hold on 1 second, Mr. Steele, before you pause at the next question? All right, Mr. Steele, you can continue. May I have just 1 second, Your Honor? One? Okay. Well, figurative. Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Then Mr. Steele comes back. You talked about Detective Dennis, Detective Belknap, and Detective Underwood. Correct. Do you remember bringing their names up? And guys, just so you know, I don't see court. I still have it open in another tab. I don't see it live. Maybe I should refresh it just to, sometimes things don't auto start. Do you remember bringing their names up? Correct. And they have been at APD before you. Is that fair to say? Correct. And did you look at it like, this is the way I understand your testimony? You look at them almost like, these are my words, mentors. Correct. That is true. Mr. Steele, Your Honor, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, sir. Thank you, investigator. The witness, thank you, Mr. Steele. The court, before we take up any inquiry counsels, let's go ahead and take a comfort. Let's come back at 4:20. Don't discuss your testimony. They go into recess. They resummon Viverito. And then Mr. Bots. You guys, shout out to Mr. Bots. We don't get to see too much from Mr. Bots. I see. Can we get the Rule 22? I mean, it's one page. It's just revoking. They can't record video. They can't record within the courtroom. They can still sit in the courtroom, but if they want to be able to stream, they've got to go to the media pool. So I can pull that if you want, if you really want to see that page. But give me a second to, like, when court starts, I'll go do that as a multitask while you guys have the court on the screen. Shout out here to Mark Nicholas. Do you think anything will be mentioned about the judge suggesting they mislead the jury? Free qua, free quay. We don't know which quay. I'm looking forward to any and all arguments. And I think I would be cautious on trying to poke the bear. I wouldn't want to piss Whitaker off, but I would say, it's such a big mess that even you were kind of like losing sight of the big picture here. So that's a great example of how sometimes things can't be cured. You tried to say maybe there's a way. We might not be talking about anybody here. And then in that moment, you should have had the realization, Whitaker, that you can't cure that. You can't undo the harm. Because not for nothing, I think it's a little bit problematic, if you ask me. They're going to come back and see that one quay is gone. So, the jury's now going to make an inference that, well, this stuff can't be related to any of the others. That was clearly the quay that they were talking about, if the jury caught the hashtag that was read before they were sent out of the room. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they didn't even piece together why they were sent out. But, I don't know. I think there's a way to circle around this and point out how it demonstrates that there's an issue with being able to fix all of the mistakes. You just can't do it, especially when it keeps happening over and over and over. Eventually, that infomercial where the tank of water is leaking and they slap some Flex Seal on it or whatever it's called and it stops the water leak. There's only so many times you can do that before the tank's going to find a way to run out of water. Yeah, you might stop a leak, but by the time you've stopped enough, all the water's spurted out. So I think there's a way to tactfully do this in a way where you're not just firing shots angrily, but actually making it part of a cumulative error, cumulative harm type of argument. So that's where I predict, I think Doug Weinstein is going to take that route, and maybe some of the other attorneys, if we get any court motions arguments today. So we'll have to see, but I'm looking forward to this for sure. And thank you for the 5. Ike says, Miss Viverito, what is a YSL gang member's natural diet? And do they grow a winter coat during the cold season? Guys, the natural habitat is like the opening statement. It's like you have Viverito, who's worked with the district attorney's office, who's now policing, right? Two arms of the state. Two arms of the state here. You've got your prosecutors, your police, right? And yeah, we know they work together enough, but now you've got them like circularly educating themselves. Oh, we're learning the case law so we know how they prosecute and how they can prosecute, and we can do our police work within those constraints. Oh, and then I was also working in the district attorney's office. It's just so circular. And then you have them both using language that treats Cleveland Avenue and the area surrounding it as a jungle, as a natural habitat. Like, think about how close-knit all the people that are supposed to be testifying independently. Because that's the argument. These gang experts, it's not cumulative. They all have their independent expertise. It's not cumulative to call 5 of them, 6 of them. But yet they're so aligned. They confer with each other weekly. It's not very independent at all how they come to any of their conclusions or perform any of their work. I think it's a huge problem. So yeah, Ike, this is honestly a great way to paint this picture. What's the natural diet? Your language, you're calling it a habitat. I would love to see a snarky question like this. I really would. You know, sometimes attorneys make the bold choice to say something slick. And like a moment like this, asking a question like this in response to a detective/expert witness on gangs calling, oh, I'm in the bushes with binoculars, because that's words she used earlier in the direct testimony of this Daubert hearing. She'd be in the bushes with binoculars. Now she's saying observing their natural habitat. Like, I would love to see an attorney just ask this question. Oh my gosh. My goodness. Let's see. All right. So thank you to Leo. Leo says, damn, I'm the goat. That's the username. Yeah, well, I agree. Thank you for the ping here. Kathy, update here. Lil Rod has left because of a toothache. I'm assuming they'll not be holding trial without one of the defendants. So there you go. But obviously they're still negotiating pleas, as we kind of discussed. So guys, I think this might be one of those days. Lil Rod does not have to be present for a plea colloquy, for a plea hearing. So that might still, court might start if somebody takes a plea and they want to talk about it. But there won't be all that. And then, there we go. I see, it looks like there might be some other rumors. I don't know about anything else. We'll come across that when we get there. But big, incredible shout out. And I hope you guys were showing some love while we were doing this reading. I'd be kind of locked in. Muckduck Inc. dropped 50 gifted subs. So hold on, I didn't realize I didn't have a banner. We've got to get Muckduck Inc. up in here. So not only growing the gang, incredibly generous, but also a Squeak sponsor. And I think an emoji combo here from Muckduck Inc. I think the best one would be like the Slimer and a duck. So thank you so much, Muckduck Inc. And I'm also seeing we have a birthday in the chat. We have Mr. Meme celebrating a birthday. Maybe that's why Muckduck Inc. is dropping gifts in here. Thank you so much. Happy birthday out here to Mr. Meme. We'll get some ducks in the chat. Yeah, and mallard ducks, you know, they've got the green on their head already. They've already got the slime feature. So, love that the YouTube duck happens to be a mallard with a little bit of green in the mix. Big, big shout out here to Muckduck Inc. Just incredibly generous. Oh, my bad. Muckduck Inc. says, ew, my duck got slimed. Well, I mean, you know, it's just like Nickelodeon, you know. The fun days of cartoons and game shows. Oh, we got a lot of birthdays. Okay. So Essence Socks with Belle Louise also says it's so happy birthday to Essence Socks with Belle Louise. Happy birthday, Belle Louise. But also saying hi to Kat, the chat, the mods, and Slat. So lots of birthday balloons here. Yeah, my bad on date. Yeah, Nickelodeon is like the classic slime days. That is a way to date somebody now. That's you know, that was in a different millennium. Oh man. Oh boy. I mean, the silver lining, you guys, of court not starting. I was like, I really want to continue this test, this cross-examination, the rest of this Daubert hearing, this transcript with Marissa Viverito. I think it's just really telling, and she's supposed to be called to come tell us about this Chamel Drinks murder, which we were getting into. We were starting to approach those topics in the upcoming days, weeks, until we had a big break in the trial, What else is new? But she's going to be coming up soon. I thought it was just really, really insightful. I think this is like Wednesday or something last week. I went and grabbed the transcript. I really ignored the first. She testified at first in December. It was real short, just her CV letter. And this is really the big hearing where she was qualified as a gang expert. But I dropped this transcript on X, and like everybody was like, oh, this is crazy. So I'm like, all right, we're going to read these 137 pages. So the silver lining of us not starting right here at noon is we might be able to get through this without just an abrupt break. Hopefully that's like a consolation prize for you guys waiting for court to start. Oh my goodness. So if a defendant isn't present, they cannot resume trial. They're not going to resume trial proceedings. However, if there was a plea colloquy, they could start court. So if you guys remember yesterday, they started up as soon as they were done with the plea. They shut it down. They said, we're adjourned. This proceeding's over. And the other defendants don't need to be there for somebody's plea colloquy. They can sit in if they want to as a member of the public, but, so... Let's see. And Paw Eyes also love the dog picture. Very cute. Gifted 5 Cat Not Williams membership. So let's get you in the banner. That's very nice of you. And I don't know, is there an all-white dog emoji? I think they get like the puppy with the spot. And there's one that looks like a shepherd. So I think we could get some dog emojis. It just won't look like... it won't look like the right breed of dog. But it'll still be a dog emoji if we could show some love here. Thank you so much for gifting 5. Very cute. I love to see the pet pictures. And then right in line here, we have Angie Lay, another adorable dog, gifting a membership out here sprinkling. Thank you so much always, Angie, for your continued support. Right? Yeah, it was super cute. Oh, there is kind of one that's like gray here. At least it's showing that way on StreamYard. It looks close enough. Close enough. Very, very cute. Look at the pets here. Also, give a shout out here to Chloe Albert. All right, double checking. Oh, okay. And Coco, if you're in the chat, thank you so much. So there was an interview yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And it was like public, and then it wasn't public, and people were having trouble watching it because on YouTube it said this video is private. It was In the Know with Miss LJ Hall. She did an interview, and I'm not going to play it, you guys. You guys can hop out of the stream and watch it. Go support the creator that's doing it. But a 16-minute interview here with Harvey and Westmoreland. So I will be watching that on my own time. Excited to see that. But a lot of people, I think, I tried to watch it yesterday. I saw a lot of people on X saying, I can't watch it. It's down. It looks like it's public now. You guys can check it out. So shout out to In the Know with Miss LJ Hall for taking the time and getting to speak with Harvey and Miss Westmoreland and bringing it to us. So that link is in the chat there. Go over there and support the creator that's actually uploading the content. Not going to snipe it here. And thank you to Coco for tagging me in that. Because I was looking for that yesterday and it was down. And we will put this clip here. Thank you, Factual Lie. I think it's from this interview, maybe. This is where you guys are referencing the nose wipe with the... while wearing, like, the green tie. Oh, look at him. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, is my... hold on, wait. Did I mess up my banner? Yeah, I've got to get my count up. You know. Okay, so where are we? Holy moly, 100. We have more than 100 new slimes. So let me update this count, because clearly I don't count in real time with these banners. But we have 118 new slimes. Thanks in huge part to Muck Duck Inc. for dropping that 50. Yeah, and yeah, he's wiping his nose in that emoji. Yeah, Peter Ortiz, exactly this. Natural habitat, right? Like, sounds like Crocodile Hunter or Animal Planet. Like, is this like a Jane Goodall documentary? Like, what are we doing here? Like, just weird. And this is all following... it's a bit subtle, and of course it's a transcript, so I'm reading it without tone of voice, but there's been a few moments that to me seem very patting self on back. So, hee hoo ha, I'm such a good expert. And then I'm the expert referring to things as somebody's natural habitat, Cleveland Avenue being like an exhibit for me to sit in the bushes with my binoculars. And I wish I haven't, what is it called? ODF or whatever, when you make a document searchable. This isn't searchable. I should have done that. I won't do it midstream because I don't feel like pulling up Adobe to do it. I wish I could jump to the part, if you guys didn't see it yesterday, where she says she hides in the bushes and watches from with binoculars. Man, like, just crazy. Yeah, seems to be profiling people, racially profiling people with the utmost confidence in her expertise, right? It's like there's a part A here and a part B, like you're self-bolstering. like, like I'm basically the Crocodile Hunter of Cleveland Avenue. Just a hot mess. If you're joining late, guys, on the screen, what we're talking about here is Marissa Viverito. So, one happy white girl says, hopefully none of the jurors grew up, live there now, or have family that are from that area. Right, like, get her on the stand and have her badger. Like, the whole neighborhood is so horrible. Everybody's so bad. Graffiti. Like, what if you just live there? And what if Steele asks her that question? So prong 6, criteria 6, if you're in the same area, but you're not really, like, if you were to decide, Miss Viverito, someone, a female, might be around one of these guys over there. They're now an associate just because they're over there, and we're seen with this person. You saw them on your binoculars in the bushes, stopping and saying hi to them when they walked by. They're friends, they know each other. And you're just going to decide now that that female, maybe a male, but that female is now an associate. It's just your discretion. There's no way to actually review this or establish that it's met enough of a criteria. You don't do on a scale of 1 to 10 type of measurement. Just wild all around. Thank you again for the support here, one happy white girl. But yeah, let yet another thing be tone deaf in this trial. Yet another thing. Miss Phil for Life says, Thank you to whoever gifted me my first ever YouTube gift. Well, welcome to Being Green. And sometimes it's hard to tell if you didn't catch the message at the top of the screen when you got gifted. But thank you so much for saying thank you anyway, and for sending a 2 to the channel. Talia Glaze says, where was Little Rod yesterday? Do we know what happened to him? Possibly he was still having a toothache yesterday, you know? I don't know if you guys have ever, toothache sometimes. You guys ever had a tooth that like hurt and then you thought maybe you were imagining it and then it goes away and you're like, oh, I was imagining it. And then like 2 weeks later or whatever, it comes back and you're like, oh, hopefully it's just an imagination again. And then a day goes by and another day goes by and you're like, oh gosh, oh no, I should have listened sooner. This is beyond repair. This is the worst. So sometimes it's just how toothaches can happen. So it might be possible if he's got a toothache today, he was already dealing with that yesterday. So, but he doesn't need to be there for a plea colloquy for somebody else. And Tess, Rockhound, I think we can see you if that's... Just want to make sure you're either talking about Tess, what Tess did Viverito take, because we were talking about that, but I see your comment if that's what you mean by test, just so you know. So... Oh my gosh, fingers crossed for you, Nana Banana. Everybody send good vibes. Went to bed with a toothache last night and it felt fine this morning, but I'm sure it'll be back. Right, so if it's that point for Little Rod, that sucks. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine being in custody with a toothache. Oh my gosh. It was a wisdom tooth and it came in fine. It was there forever and then one day it hurt and it just wouldn't go away. It kept getting worse. I had a whole headache. I just went to... This was in Rochester near Strong Memorial Hospital, so I think they have a dental program. I went to the hospital for it just to have them yank it. But they have a dental program. It was like $95. They yanked my tooth out. Oh my God, it felt so good. It felt so good. Never in my life would I wish tooth pain on anybody. Anybody. Especially when you are not in... I had the freedom to get in my car and drive. It was like 5 minutes away. To just be like, please get it out of my mouth. So, oh my gosh, not having the ability to do that. Oh, yes, the face swelling. Okay. No more teeth topics. But yeah, Talia, I think it was notable that he wasn't there. He didn't have to be there, but I'd imagine, probably a toothache lingering for multiple days. So, and you never know if they don't resolve that. It could be an issue if they want to have court tomorrow with the jury present. They can't just do that without him being able to attend. So hopefully for his sake and for court, they let him work something out. That sucks. That definitely sucks. Oh man. Oh wait, hold on. So Rambling Rose, I will have to research this. I feel really stupid. Okay, so on St. Patrick's Day in Rochester, there would be like, they'd call it the paddy wagon, and they would make it a joke like with the D for St. Patrick's Day. So I need to actually look at the reference here because the point out, and people would be like, oh, they got the paddy wagon ready to go. Because with St. Patrick's Day, day drinking, stuff gets rowdy. And Patty joking on it being St. Patrick's Day. They'd be arresting people later in the night when people were drunk and rowdy and call it the paddy wagon. So I don't actually know the history, but I can only imagine. So gotta put this on the radar here. And that language, when you see multiple officers / gang experts use it, and then the opening statement of the prosecutor in this place, I kind of get a visceral reaction. It's just like woven through the whole process. So let's see. Oh, okay. So it is actually the Irish here calling. Oh my gosh. Okay. Because it would be pointed out like they're out here watching, like you walk by, people would point out that they've got the extra space to throw people, round people up in, because they're expecting they're going to be looking for people. that are going to be drunk at the end of an all-day St. Patrick's Day parade / going out. Because in Rochester, guys, Rochester does it really big for St. Patrick's Day. A lot of people come over from the Canadian border to go to Rochester for the holidays, for St. Patrick's Day, the parade. And it's like, middle of the day, noon, daylight is shining through the clubs, but the clubs are open. Everybody's dressed in green. So I can totally picture that. All right. And then rumor, the execs of YSL record label are in the courtroom. Interesting. That to me sounds like, if that's true, that sounds like a sentencing. Some type of plea of support for sentencing. So let's see. Oh, I don't know. Is the transcript blurry for you guys? Can you guys see the transcript? Yeah, corned beef. So yeah, but I don't know. And guys, my only speculation is because, and now we have Lil Rod not there either. But for them to not have canceled court, knowing that Lil Rod wouldn't be in attendance today and they're still having the media wait, to me it sounds like plea negotiations, whoever it may involve, are underway. So there you go. As far as other updates, I'm not going to say there isn't credible updates out there, but I have no way to verify or confirm them. So with that being said, rumor is Cat doesn't sigh. Yeah, okay. They're going to call you out in 2 seconds real quick. We're all just old and squinting. I don't know. I can make it probably a little bigger. If we don't need the lines on the side, I can zoom in one more time. So we can continue with this. Let me take a sip. We're going to get some Mr. Bots. So shout out to Mr. Bots. So cross-examination, Daubert hearing, Marissa Viverito from October 2023. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Bots. You didn't hear anything on that tape about me supposed to be getting any money, did you? Wait, I gotta zoom out. Mr. Weinstein. Mr. Bots, could you speak into the microphone, please? Mr. Bots, you didn't hear anything on that tape about me supposed to be getting any money, did you? No, I just heard your client spends it elsewhere. Uh-oh, let me ask you something. You did supervise, either under the auspices of community service representative or probation officer, correct, Mr. Jackson? That's Mr. Stillwell, remember, Shannon Stillwell Jackson. Correct. And that was for an extended period of time, was it not? Pretty decent. I remember being familiar with him in 2013, and then when I came back, I think I supervised him again. For several years? Correct. And during that period of time, he would either report to you or you would go for a home visit, correct? Correct. And you would take a notepad or something with you, would you not, to memorialize whatever went on? No, not a notepad. The interactions, I have a pretty decent memory, and I would kind of just remember what we talked about. If it was something that was like extraordinary, I would kind of remember that. Also, my interactions with him were on body camera, I believe, most of them. So I would have to dock my body camera and label them so they were associated with him. So basically all you were doing was memorializing whether he reported or not. Well, no. The contents of the conversation will be noted in his case file. Well, that is memorializing. Yeah, but not just whether he reported or not. They were contents of what he was doing, his job status, whether he had been in contact with law enforcement, things of that nature. And you said that you also questioned him about gang affiliation or anything like that, and he was evasive? Not so much his gang affiliation, but things that were... it's been a long time since I have seen Mr. Jackson in that setting. I just know that anytime I brought up or broached that subject, I didn't get anything out of him regarding the gang. He didn't want to. I knew what was going on because I would listen to jail calls and see that he was involved in what he was involved in from police reports, things of that nature, but he did not want to discuss those things with me. Okay, and was that memorialized if he denied this or denied that? It would say, a typical case note would say, I met with the defendant or supervisee at this location. I would talk about employment status, any special conditions, and whether he advised he had contact with law enforcement or not. Okay, but basically, evasive means that he did not cooperate. He didn't admit anything that you asked him. Is that what that means? No, I would have to supplement my supervision of him with jail calls and police reports and things of that nature, and social media to kind of just get a full picture of what Mr. Jackson had going on. And you would put all of that in the file, correct? If it rose to the level of a revocation, yes. Well, you would have to put it in the file in order for it to rise to the level of right. If it was something where he had a new criminal offense or was involved in an incident report, I would notate that in the file or upload it to the file. Okay, and as a matter of a fact, you did take out a warrant on him one or more times, correct? More than once, yes. And let me ask you, are those files still available? Do you have those? I haven't worked for that agency since 2021, so no, I don't know what their retention policy is. I don't have access to any of that. So this is October 2023, and she doesn't know what happened since 2021. But you haven't asked for it then, correct? I have not, no. Let me just ask you one other thing as a want-to-be expert on gangs. Bots! How do you get out of one? You know, everything about how to get into one. But how do you know when somebody gets out of a gang? As an expert on gangs, you can get out of it. You can walk away from the gang. It's been done before. I've seen it happen. So it's rare? Is that what you're saying? It's rare. So once you're in there for life? Not necessarily. I spoke with Mr. Steele at length on Friday, or for a little bit on Friday, and he explained about, so you're getting your research from the defense attorneys. Go ahead. Mr. Steele explained how Mr. Crittenden has turned his life around and gotten out of a gang and goes on tour with him and educates the youth about the dangers of gang violence and how to get out of a gang and the pitfalls of gang violence. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. I've afforded Mr. Jackson several opportunities to do the right thing, and jobs, things of that nature. And he just didn't want to do it, was not interested. Do you guys see that the one time she learns about something good-natured about somebody, where she's not observing someone in a habitat expecting the worst behavior possible, who is the one mentoring her and teaching her? Everything else she learns from somebody that's part of the DA's office or part of the prosecution team or part of the police. APD. The one time she learns something that seems starkly different from everything else she's learned and is an expert in, where is she learning it? She's learning it from these things that aren't taught in the trainings, aren't included in the courses, aren't part of her daily, weekly check-ins, aren't part of her mentorship. She goes outside her bubble for 2 seconds and learns something riveting. That, hey, people can get out of gangs and turn their life around. Like, this is a small little thing here, but this is pretty, there's like layers here. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. But you couldn't advise somebody how to get out, though. You can't remove tattoos. You could remove tattoos. Where you can't see them at all? Pretty much, yes. You can go get laser. At one point in time, I think we may have had a partner that was volunteering to do it for free. One thing about me, can you imagine sitting there at the table getting a free tattoo removal and they're like, so what did your gang used to do? Tell me about it. Start snitching. One thing about me, when I supervise people, I would ask friends of mine to hire these people. I would buy people clothes out of my own pocket to go to job interviews. I would get cards from people saying, thank you for talking to me like a civilian and not a criminal. All right, so maybe she was out here trying to not treat everybody as an exhibit. Maybe this is self-touting because this is the first time she's mentioned it, right where she probably sees where Bots is trying to get at. This is the only time she's mentioned it. And there's been several times throughout this direct and cross where she's been asked something to the effect of anything else that we haven't already let Judge Glanville hear about that you'd like to share that goes to what you do in your work. She never volunteers this until Bots asks. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Does this make you feel positive? On face value, this sounds like great. I would like for investigators to be able to see some humanity and not just lock on target and try to strike and pray, right? It could be good to have some balance like this at face value. But do I really believe that this is Marissa Viverito's actual way that she does her work? She hasn't mentioned it yet? I don't know. I don't know. So I've even gotten people gang members placed in apprenticeships where they learn a trade and can get an LLC. So if you're motivated enough, you can start a record label, and then the state can use that record label against you as, I know, because we've seen in movies or other instances where someone used it as a front. But that's up to you. I can't help you if you want to stand on Cleveland Avenue all day. I can't. There's nothing I can do. The person has to want to change. And I agree, right? There's some truth here. There is some truth here that somebody has to want to change. But I also feel like this is very self-touting. Self-touting here. All right, so basically there is no set of rules that you look at that determines or can determine whether somebody is no longer affiliated with what you call a gang. No, there is. I would use the criteria I spoke about, the 6-point criteria. And at this point in time, even from the Fulton County Jail, Mr. Jackson is still a willing participant in the gang. Well, I'm not just talking about him, I'm talking about any of them. Yeah, I would use the criteria that I spoke about. And are you saying, and this is a good example of what we just saw, where she would flip-flop between gang expert testimony and fact witness testimony. So if Love is doing her questioning when she's on the stand in front of a jury, this is a situation where you see that she kind of just went rogue when someone asked her a broad question about her expertise and jumped and made a conclusion of fact about Shannon Stillwell. Mr. Jackson is still a willing participant in the gang. She's concluding that he's part of the gang and that he's willing. This goes to like the element. This is mens rea right here. And this is the issue. You get these experts on the stand that have also investigated on the case, and the state has no problem. This is not in front of the jury for a Daubert hearing, this particular Daubert hearing. They've done Daubert in front of the jury as an oopsie before. But the state seems to be fine when their expert/fact witness blurs the line because they want someone to blurt out in front of the jury, yes, the conclusion. We've corroborated, we've verified that Shannon Stillwell, Mr. Jackson, is still a willing participant in the gang. Knowingly. Kenzo, we are reading the Daubert hearing transcript of Marissa Viverito, who's supposed to be called soon. So it's interesting. It's an interesting read. So, well, I'm not just talking about him, I'm talking about any of them. Viverito, yeah, I would use the criteria that I spoke about. And are you saying that you only know one, Mr. Crittenton, that fulfilled that criteria? Miss Love, Your Honor, I'll object to that as mischaracterization. And I bet she'll pick up, right? If Viverito wasn't catching how she should answer that, this is a hint. The court, I'll sustain the objection. The witness, no, I'm saying that's an example of one. I'm not going to air out people's personal business on the stand that have nothing to do with this case that have gotten away from this. Mr. Botts, I have no further questions, Your Honor. The court, okay. Mr. Weinstein, no questions, Your Honor. Mr. Matthews, no questions. Mr. Williams, no questions. Mr. Partridge, I don't have anything to add. Anybody else I missed? All right. Redirect. Just briefly, Judge. Thank you. Investigator Viverito, you were asked by Mr. Steele whether any of the interviews that you conducted with defendants in this case gave you direct information related to YSL. Do you recall that? I do. Are you trained to look at other sources to determine the veracity of statements given to you by purported gang members? I am. What are the other sources that you were trained to look for? I'll speak to other investigators that may have experience with the person. Like I said, I'll go to jail calls. Like, for example, on the wiretap when I met with Mr. Garlington and Mr. Jackson on the scene when they were victims and asked them what happened and who would want to hurt them or something of that nature. They immediately got on the wiretap and laughed about lying to me. That will add to the claims. I'll look at phone extractions to see if that validates, confirms, or denies things depending on what I have available to me, but I try and exhaust any available methods I have. And is it unusual that purported gang members decline to be fully forthcoming or truthful during your interviews with them? Absolutely not. Okay, are you in any way, where is it that you received the training to look for other ways to corroborate statements made by purported gang members? It's a combination of the training I received over years of all the resources available to you because gang cases, traditionally, you don't really have a cooperating witness because of the fear of cooperation or the fear of being exposed or harmed. Yeah, unless they have a plea. Uh, so I kind of operate every case that I have as if I don't have a cooperating witness. It's a luxury. So it's a combination of the training I received and my personal experience or my work experience in this case. And hold on to this. Hold on to this. How difficult it is for someone to cooperate and actually tell you the truth. So it's a combination of the training I received and my personal experience or my work experience in this case. Is it ever the case that social media allows you to corroborate or dispel statements made to you by purported gang members? It does, that is correct. And what are some of the platforms you've been able to utilize to enhance or increase your knowledge on YSL in this case? Facebook is very, I don't want to say outdated, but not used as much. Instagram is probably the most popular one currently, and Twitter. And are you trained, or does your training and experience give you insight into how gang members or purported gang members use social media to reach out to others or advertise what they do? Yeah, they will use it. No longer are you seeing standing on the block. They'll use it to claim territory. They'll use it to brag about affiliations, to threaten and incite rival gang members. They will use it to show how violent they are, the power that they wield, the money that they have. They will use it to post their music that may be used to antagonize people. It can be used for a variety of things when it comes to the gang world. You were asked by Mr. Steele specifically as it relates to YSL and your insight that you have gained into the goings-on and the business conducted by YSL in this case. Have you been able to use social media to enhance your knowledge regarding the activities of YSL and its rivals in this case? I have. Would you explain some of the ways that has been the case? Mr. Harvey, Judge, I think this was gone into on direct examination, the use of social media. The court, yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think that you're replowing ground that we've covered already. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Love, you were asked by Mr. Steele how it was that the interviews you conducted gave you insight into YSL when, as you've testified, the participants in the interview were not fully forthcoming, and your response was that you pick up on things other people can't. Do you recall that? I do. Would you explain what you meant by that? Just being evasive and being not forthcoming when I know the answer. Just being evasive and being not forthcoming when I know the answer shows me that there is something to hide. So usually when I ask the question, I'm going to know the answer ahead of time. And showing that you are not forthcoming leads me to believe there is something more there, or you have a reason to not be truthful. And you were asked with respect to Mr. Steele about the sources of the information that you were using to gain insight into YSL. Did any of those sources, including video interviews online, perhaps on YouTube, or particular defendants in this case? Yes, several. And were you able to hear from the defendants' own mouths information on those interviews that perhaps they didn't or wouldn't have given to you in person? Mr. Harvey, again, the same thing. We went into the court. What is the basis for the objection, sir? Already asked and answered. I'll sustain the question. Ms. Love, are you able to tell the court whether there is any one place that you were able to gain more information than any other as it pertains to the insight and the knowledge that you have on YSL and its activities? I would say it would have to be between recorded phone calls and phone extractions. And since you have already talked about the amount, I'll say that is all. Ms. Love, thank you, Judge. The court, anything further, Mr. Steele or Mr. Harvey? No. All right. May we permanently or temporarily excuse Mr. Investigator Viverito for purposes of the motion? Yes, Your Honor. Permanently or temporarily? I believe permanently. Your Honor, I thought that you said there was possibly more information coming. I don't want to do permanent. The court, just for the motion. Mr. Steele, yeah, that's the court. Whether or not I decide to use that information or that's relevant may come later, but I think I can make a threshold ruling. Miss Love, so I would like it temporarily because, she'll be subject to being recalled again. Madam, I'm going to temporarily excuse you for purposes of these proceedings, and we may call you again. Thank you, Your Honor. So don't discuss your testimony. Then they have a argument that's not transcribed, and then they call Investigator Viverito back in. So, all right, sworn back in just to make sure. We need to recall you briefly. We've got like 20 more pages, though. Miss Love, go right ahead, madam. Miss Love, thank you, Judge. Investigator Viverito, you spoke earlier today about the methods that you use to obtain information and the sources from which you gained insight into various criminal street gangs. Do you recall that? So this gives us insight. What happened at the sidebar? We suddenly need more before we can finish up this motion to qualify her as an expert witness. So what does Love have to come in here and establish? So I do. And did those methods and sources include, Mr. Harvey? I thought that we were going to limit it to the opinions, not whether the court. I'm going to overrule the objection, sir. Thank you. Miss Love, thank you. Did those methods and sources include listening to Mr. Steele leading? Court sustained. Just rephrase it. Yes, Your Honor. What were those methods and sources that you used to gain information regarding criminal street gangs? Physical surveillance in the actual environment where the gangs operate, listening to recorded jail calls as well, thousands of wiretap jail calls, conducting interviews, dialoguing with other investigators who are well-versed in whatever gang I'm investigating, reading police reports, looking at social media, looking at tattoos, reviewing phone extractions. There were several different methods. And did those methods include talking to friends and family members of purported street gang members? Correct. Friends and family members, as well as residents of the community where these gang members operate. Do they include looking at the words of the defendants themselves in conjunction with those other sources? Objection. Basis. What words? It's vague. Harvey. And what defendants? The court. I'm going to sustain as to form. You can rephrase, madam. Yes, Your Honor. Love. You described during your cross-examination by Mr. Steele and others that you have interviewed defendants in this case personally. Correct. And based on the content of those interviews and the content of the interviews that you've observed, conducted by other investigators and online vloggers, when taken in conjunction with the sources that you described, were you able to form an opinion in this case regarding whether or not YSL is properly classified as a criminal street gang? Yes. And based on the sources that you've identified and the methodology, were you able to identify common gang identifiers, language, hand signs, dress codes, and others that are utilized by YSL? Yes. And in your opinion, based on your education, training, experience, and the sources that you've cited for the court, is YSL properly classified as a criminal street gang? It is. Mr. Steele, I don't believe that would assist the jury. The court, I'm going to make that decision, okay? Miss Love, were you able to, through these various sources, form opinions regarding terminology used by YSL members? Yes. Mr. Steele, vague. What terminology are we talking about? Court, I'll sustain as to form. Yes, Your Honor. Why don't you rephrase that? Yes, Your Honor. Were you able to, based on these methods and based on these sources, form an opinion about whether the defendants charged in this case and that remain on trial here today are members of the criminal street gang called YSL or Young Slime Life? Steele, same objection, Your Honor. This is not hard. The evidence comes out, whatever, tattoos, logos, hand signs. Jurors don't need that extra step. None of this is beyond the ken of the jury, so I object. Miss Love, Your Honor, the jury has, if the court will allow me just one moment. Yes, ma'am. So I take a moment, and then Love asks, Investigator Viverito, in your experience, is YSL used only and known only to the public as a criminal street gang, or are there other things that YSL would be used for? It could be known as the Young Stoner Life record label, but there's a differentiation between the gang and the record label. And there's a cologne that goes by the moniker. There's a cologne, there's purses, there's a brand, a whole luxury brand as well. And is the general public, based on your experience and knowledge and background. So this is why. Why do we need an expert to testify to this? Well, because the general public might only know about the record label or the luxury clothing brand. Is the general public versed in what it is that goes into making or qualifying YSL in this particular case and distinguishing it from Young Stoner Life? For instance, Yves Saint Laurent, for instance. Mr. Steele, that is beyond the scope of this witness's capability. The court may be able to answer that question. Miss Love, Your Honor, I believe that the inquiry for the witness, the court, it's whether or not it'll be helpful to the jury, so I'll overrule the objection, Mr. Steele. Miss Love, thank you. You may answer it. No. For example, my parents would not be able to tell you what the difference is between them. It might take more explaining by someone that's knowledgeable on the topic. And is the information you've been able to obtain through the sources that you described for the court and the methods you described for the court, are all of those sources and methods available to the general public in order to aid and help them make that distinction? So they teach this course. No, not at all. They teach this course that only the cops can attend And then they say, well, because we attended and we teach ourselves and the general public isn't allowed to hear it, nobody else could understand these things that we talk about behind these closed doors. So, based on your training, experience, and background, is YSL and gang investigations, is there terminology that is used that you have observed used by members of YSL that when taken literally don't accurately convey what the intended? Mr. Harvey, let me object to the form of the question, please. The court, I'll sustain the question as to form. You can rephrase it. Ms. Love, thank you. During your time in training with gangs and specifically YSL, have you learned of phrases that may be used by YSL or other gangs? For instance, get an autograph for the gang. This is going to the YFN Lucci thing. Mr. Harvey, let me object to the for instance, and let me object to the other gangs. We're here to hear her opinion about this case. The court, but she's got to get into that, Mr. Harvey. Okay, so I'm going to overrule your objection, sir. Mr. Steele, I also object to the form of the question on training in YSL. I asked that specific question, and the answer was there was none on YSL specifically, so I object to the form. Glanville, I'll sustain as to the form of the question. Go ahead and rephrase that, madam. Does your training and your experience through these particular sources give you any particular knowledge regarding the language used by gang members, and YSL in particular, that the jury, generally, the general public, does not have? Yes. One good example of that would be cell phone extractions, where you can see how these members communicate with each other on a daily basis and the ways that they communicate, the terms that they use to communicate with each other. And based on these sources, were you able to form an opinion about whether or not the crimes alleged in this indictment would have been committed in furtherance of the criminal street gang YSL? Yes. Mr. Harvey, I'm going to object to that. That is beyond the purview of, that is precisely what the jury gets to determine. This witness can't determine that and cannot testify to that. Mr. Steele, I would object to that. That is not beyond the ken of the jury. Mr. Harvey, that's what this trial is all about. The court, well, her opinion, well, actually, she can testify about the ultimate issue. It's only when you're dealing with other subject areas that would be impermissible. So I'm going to overrule the objection. Now, this is where I would love some of the legally inclined in the chat. Dealing with ultimate issue, guys, we did a top-level summary when we read the first part of this. We're going to rely on Wikipedia. This relates to when expert witnesses are testifying in a trial. So an ultimate issue in criminal law is a legal issue at stake in the prosecution of a crime for which an expert witness is providing testimony. They gave this example. If the issue is the defendant's mental state at the time of the offense, the ultimate issue would be the defendant's sanity or insanity during the commission of the crime. In the past, expert witnesses were allowed to give testimony. Oh, I'm not on the screen, sorry. In the past, experts, sorry about the screen, they used to be allowed to give testimony on ultimate issues, such as the applicability of the insanity defense to a particular defendant. However, after the 1982 trial of John Hinckley Jr., the federal rules of evidence were changed. Now in the United States, federal courts and some states have rules of evidence that specifically rule out legal conclusions drawn by expert witnesses in their testimony. However, a large amount of judicial discretion is allowed in how this rule is applied, resulting in an uneven application of rules across jurisdictions. Now, they give a little bit here that I think is important, and then we'll get back to the transcript and we'll see the back and forth on, Rule 704 between Harvey, Steele, and Glanville. The federal rules do not say what falls within the definition of an ultimate issue. However, a long history of case law on the subject suggests that an expert witness runs afoul if he uses the same words with legal meaning, that will ultimately be presented to the jury. One court excluded a psychologist's evidence on the credibility of a prosecution's witness on the grounds that it amounted to an ultimate opinion, meaning that it was an opinion that could only be properly reached by a jury. The expert witness testimony is confined to giving an opinion on whether, and the wording is going to be important here, on whether the defendant had a serious mental disorder at the time of the offense. So with this example of a psychologist, the psychologist can, give an opinion they had a serious disorder, right? Individually, the facts of this case, I think this person on trial had this disorder at the time of the offense. But then when it comes terms to applying it to everything going on, They can only explain the symptoms and characteristics of the diagnosis that they're saying the person has. Right? So follow me here. Including other testimony regarding the defendant's mental status, mens rea, and motivation. But the expert witness cannot make a statement addressing the issue of whether the legal test for insanity has been met. So they might be able to say, like, hey, there are certain things or behaviors or symptoms that would be characteristic with this diagnosis, and I'm giving you my opinion that this person was suffering from this mental disorder at the time. What I can't do is conclude to the jury that unequivocally I've made the determination what their motivation, their intent, their mens rea, their mental status was during the time of this crime that they allegedly committed. I cannot do that. That is left to the judge and the jury. So bench trial versus jury trial. The restriction of expert opinion on ultimate issues includes any testimony on the criminal elements, including testimony that would bear on the mental state of the defendant, relevant to ultimate legal decisions to be decided by the triers of fact. So we kind of tried to give that context before we did the reading yesterday. I think it's important to do that now because we're going to see the judge and the defense attorneys go back and forth saying, well, you're saying the judge is trying to say the ultimate issue is this one thing. The defendants are going to say, well, an expert cannot get into certain things as the ultimate issue. They can't testify to that. So, court is live. Hold on, let me refresh it. Are you guys on like 11 Alive or something? Okay, 11 Alive is just on their thing. Where are you guys watching? Okay, I mean, I'll switch to this because it's already like technically up, but they're not on anything. So there you go. And we will, as soon as there's noise, we'll flip over to there. So it looks like they are going for a 1 p.m. start time. So we'll do a little bit here, and as soon as I hear noise, we'll toggle over. So Glanville's saying, well, her opinion, well, actually, she can testify about the ultimate issue. It's only when you're dealing with other subject areas that would be impermissible. So I'm going to overrule the objection. So he's saying here that the only time she couldn't testify is if it's other subject matter that she's not an expert in. He's not even addressing mental state, mens rea, intent, motivation. Mr. Matthews Sr., Your Honor, under 704, I think they can testify as it relates to what that mental state is. The court, no, you can't testify about mental state. Mr. Matthews, correct. Glanville, but you can testify about other things that reach the ultimate issue. So this is Glanville really pushing his judicial discretion, in my opinion, from my layperson understanding. Mr. Steele, but that's what I agree with Mr. Matthews. The court, but 704 allows you to do that. So I'm going to overrule the objection. Mr. Steele, this is a willful and knowing mental state. The court, no, it's not. Mr. Steele, oh, yes, it is. The court, that's different, Mr. Steele. No, this is a conspiracy. The court, no, this is an issue of proof. Mental health is specifically, or mental status is specifically mentioned in 704, that experts cannot testify to. Mr. Steele, it's not. The court, so I disagree with you about that. We're just going to have to disagree for the purposes of the record. Mr. Steele, you can't. Respectfully, this honorable court can't allow anybody to say what is inside Mr. Williams' head. The court, no, she's not testifying to that. Mr. Steele, that was the question. The court, no, she's testifying about whether or not it's in the ken of the average person. And ultimately, whether or not a gang has been sufficiently proven under statute is the jury's determination. I'm going to charge them on that, and they are going to make a finding on that. But whether or not they accept her testimony on that is a totally separate thing. They may decide, no, we're not going to, and decide there's a failure of proof. But they may also decide, based upon what's testified to in this case, that the states met that particular definition. Mr. Steele, right. But by nature, by animal, by statute, criminal street gang is 3 or more people. It's a conspiracy. You can't join a conspiracy except with willful and knowledge of what the conspiracy is about. What Mr. Matthews said is exactly right. This gets into the mindset, the mental state. The court, no, I disagree about that. Those are all exigencies of whether or not you have proof that a criminal street gang exists and whether or not it's met by statute. So we're going to disagree about that, okay? I'll allow her to testify about that for the purpose of this hearing. By Ms. Love. And so were you able to form an opinion about whether the crimes alleged in this indictment were done in furtherance of the criminal street gang, Young Slime Life? Yes. And what is that opinion? That the crimes alleged in the indictment were used to further the criminal street gang, Young Slime Life. When the answer that you want's in the question, she just repeated it. Ms. Love. One moment, Judge. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Love, I think that is all I have for now. The court. Mr. Harvey, anything else, sir? I have nothing else. Mr. Steele, anything else? Yes, so here's some recross. Good evening. The time has passed. Good evening. Thank you for returning. I would like to know exactly how you conclude, and I'm speaking first of Mr. Williams, how Mr. Williams furthered a supposed YSL gang activity. Miss Love, Your Honor. Now look at this. Look at this. Look at what Steele is blocked from actually crossing on. The state got to elicit the direct testimony over objection. So Steele's trying to probe. I would like to know exactly how you conclude, and I'm speaking first of Mr. Williams, how Mr. Williams furthered a supposed YSL gang activity. Miss Love, Your Honor, I'm going to object because that was not court basis. As to the form, it presupposes something that has not been inquired about specifically. We spoke about the crimes alleged in this indictment. Mr. Steele, well, that is what I'm asking. Then I'll ask about the indictment offenses. The court, I'm going to sustain it as to your client as of yet, Mr. Steele. You can ask general questions if you would like in regard to what she's testified to. By Mr. Steele, I'd like you to explain that answer you gave at the very end of your redirect with Miss Love. Okay, explain how you get. I'm going to start with Mr. Williams. We're going to go through everybody. How his conduct furthered what you said is a criminal street gang, YSL. The court, we can't go into that right now. I mean, that is the whole purpose of Mr. Steele. I want to get into the methodology. The court is the predicate. We qualify her. Then you get into all of that in front of the jury. Mr. Steele, I'm supposed to know that already. The court, say again. Mr. Steele, I'm supposed to have that information already. And then the witness investigative Viverito just testified to that. I have every right to know what is her opinion, what are the specifics, and how did you get there? That is the whole point of this exercise. Otherwise, we have the same thing that we had before. The court, remember, I'm supposed to do the gatekeeping function right now. We're not here to try whether or not what specifically the basis for opinion in the sense of whether or not the jury accepts it or not. This is just a gatekeeping function. Mr. Steele, yeah, but it's the reliability factor and qualifications, and then you merge them together with the opinion. Now, I'm asking the court, there is nothing in any of these cases, Mr. Steele, that you have proffered to me and the state proffered to me that I have to know the opinion at this point in time. Mr. Steele, if you don't know the opinion, how do you know the methodology was applied correctly? Miss Love, Your Honor. The court, hold on. Investigative Viverito, can you step out just where Deputy Ingram is for a second? Yes, Your Honor. So Viverito exits. The court, Mr. Steele, I can tell you that the case law that I looked at already, to include the Golden Peanut case that you all mentioned to me, Justice McMillian, indicates in her opinion that that the burden is on the proponent, the state. They don't have to prove that it's scientifically correct, but by a preponderance of the evidence, it's reliable. So based upon what I heard so far, I make a reliability determination based on those factors. I don't need an opinion at this point. Mr. Steele, but the whole point is we need to know her opinion, so we heard her opinion, Mr. Steele, and I'm entitled to ask questions. That is the whole point of the adversarial system. The court, I get it, Mr. Steele. I know you get it. The court, I get it. I really do get that. But I'm telling you at this point in time, I think we have gone through enough for me to make that threshold. What you are doing at this point in time is making further inquiry into issues that I believe are going to be testified to at trial. I mean, I know I have to make a reliability determination at this point in time, and Mr. Steele, I want to challenge now what is the basis for that statement that YSL is a criminal street gang and this indictment furthers the gang activities. I don't have any idea how you get there except yes. And for the reason for her becoming an expert, allegedly, is how do gangs work and how does YSL work? What does she mean? She's almighty now on earth? She's going to be able to testify as to Mr. Williams' mental state? Because that's what this is. The court. No, I really wish you would look. There's zealous advocacy and then there's contortion, okay? You're contorting at this point in time. That is not what the law says about conspiracy. Mr. Steele, it's so what the law says. What are you? Conspiracy is a willful and knowing mental state. The court. That's for a jury to determine whether or not the statutory definition of a conspiracy is met. 704 experts can testify about the ultimate issue, except for mental health defenses and the ultimate. And it's like he's reciting this, but he doesn't get it. Mr. Steele, it doesn't say mental health, it says mental state. The court. Yes, as to other things. So whether or not they're involved in a gang, it has a statutory definition. It's not a mental state. A gang is a conspiracy by law. You can't enter a gang without the mental state. The court. We're not asking her opinion about the mental status of Mr. Williams or any other accused. Mr. Steele, that was the last question to her. Did these people in the gang do this conduct in the indictment that furthered the criminal street gang's activity? Those are all mental states. I'm asking her how could you ever make that statement? This is outrageous, her testimony. Mr. Williams Sr., unintelligible. Court reporter, I can't hear you. The court, we can't hear you, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthews Sr., the fact, Your Honor, that the witness is testifying that the person furthered, in other words, I did this to further, to enhance my place in the gang, to enhance my power, to enhance my reputation. Furtherance. My mindset was that I'm going to do this because. So that is furtherance. That is the mental state that 704 says you can't do. The court. Mr. Matthews, we're going to disagree about that, okay? So thank you very much. Anything further, state, on this issue before I decide whether or not I'm going to sustain this objection? Ms. Love. No, Your Honor. I think that not unless it's necessary. I can ask further. Mr. Weinstein. Ms. Love, please use the microphone. Please. Ms. Love. Your Honor, of course the court has the authority to make further inquiries of the witness itself, and I can make further inquiries with more specifications. But as to the question posed by Mr. Steele, how do you know this person did this? That is not the inquiry that the state made of the witness, and that is not, I don't believe it's proper inquiry to be made at this point. But I can further examine the witness as it relates to her observations on colors, signs, monikers. But I think that she already testified about that. The court. I am going to sustain the objection, Mr. Steele. I believe she's testified about the methodologies and how she's come to that particular, that she's followed that. But whether or not, and I have to make some certain findings, but whether or not the basis for her opinion, Mr. Steele, Your Honor, the court, hold up. The court, Mr. Steele, I'm going to let you ask your questions, okay? I'll let you ask your questions. So let's recall Mr. Viverito, please. Miss Viverito, please. Investigator Viverito. Mr. Steele, Your Honor, I'm also going to have a 403 argument too, about the need, because there's so many. The court, about the what? I'm sorry. Mr. Steele, the need. How many gang experts do we need? The court, I think you mentioned that already. That is a separate issue that I'll take up independently. Let me get through this first. So, Viverito gets back in there. Good evening. Good evening again, Mr. Steele. Please, with specificity, explain how, and I'm going to use everybody, but Mr. Williams furthered supposed YSL gang activity. What are you relying on? What information and methodology? I mean, looking through phone extractions, you see him dialoguing with Mr. Huey at some point, telling him, if you don't do something, somebody is going to die. Mr. Williams is the leader of the gang, so it's his responsibility that everybody in the gang works for him. Well, okay, I mean, that wasn't very Viverito. I mean, there are several incidents in this indictment, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I mean, you can see when Mr. Eppinger is trying to stab Mr. Bennett in the jail, he's seeking the approval of Mr. Williams. He's seeking money from Mr. Williams. If that money is not being given, there is no expectation of that money being given. That crime doesn't happen. If you see when Mr. Myrick is trying to stab Mr. Bennett, it's he's under the impression, whether Mr. Williams is contacted or not, that Mr. Williams was given, that he was going to get paid. You can see that in the evidence. I mean, I don't know. Every time an incident happens with YFN, we break for impact from YSL. It's back and forth, back and forth. It's a ping pong game. You sit there and you wait for it to happen. It happened in 2015, it happened in 2020, and now it's happening again with the stabbing of Mr. Bennett. It's just an instant ping pong back and forth between the two gangs to further the violent reputation of the gang. You said Mr. Williams is the leader of the YSL gang or something to that effect? Correct. What are you basing that on? Mr. Williams has proclaimed himself the founder of this gang. There's YouTube videos of him on a private jet saying, I'm the founder of, pardon my French, I'm the founder of this shit, or something like that. Again, this is off the cuff because I didn't expect this. But he's bragged about being the founder. He's bragged about being the leader. I mean, he's directing traffic in the Instagram DM when he says, why haven't you all beat him up or shot him yet? Or he says, do this or somebody's going to die. And Mr. Huey responds to him at one point and says, are you trying to have something done to me? Tell me now. Like, let me know if you're trying to have something done to me. And now, this do this or something is going to die is apparently when Huey, like, robbed somebody and needed to give someone the stuff back. What's his name? The producer. So, an associate of Jeffrey Williams and YSL. Huey allegedly robs this person. Jeffrey Williams says, give him his stuff back. Or, but this, why haven't you all beat him up or shot him yet? This quote is not a correct quote. This is from a group text, and it's talking about a Floyd Mayweather fight. I forget what witness we had on the stand. I think it was Mooktunk, where they read that as well as the little Uzi, the 24 million on his head group texts that they swore, and they brought it up at the bond hearings, that this is Jeffrey Williams being the gang leader. That's what we've got. That's what we've got. So, and Mr. Huey responds to him at one point and says, are you trying to have something done to me? Tell me now. Like, let me know if you're trying to have something done to me. So somebody that wields that kind of power is in a leadership role. They call him King Slime. I mean, I don't know how else to break that down. And this is all in your opinion, based upon reading the discovery in this case, or what I call discovery in this case. Viverito. I mean, it's several factors. I watch countless hours of interviews and YouTube videos, and I have spoken with people who on Cleveland Avenue will say, yes, that is the people who have lived out there for years. People who've lived near the 2830 Waters Road trap house will explain how Mr. Williams comes out there, and he's out there at the trap house all the time checking on the house. I mean, I don't know what else to do. That comes from law enforcement, and I know Mr. Williams is laughing and thinks this is funny, but that comes from law enforcement officers, and that comes from the neighbors at the location that Mr. Williams is there. I have pictures of Mr. Williams at a YSL trap house days before it gets shot up at Waters Road, so I don't know how we're not saying how he's the leader. So, I guess, what training did you need to do any of that? Well, you just told this Honorable Judge Glanville. The court. She already testified to her training. I have her CV and have a lot of testimony about what she's undergone. Mr. Steele, this is all just your personal work on this case? No, you keep saying that, Mr. Steele. I have great respect for you, but you keep saying that, and I keep saying to you, it is my training coupled with my experience. Tell me about the training on this case. My training on gangs in general and how leadership in the gangs can run things and demand respect from the members of the gang and will pay members of the gang to do things and things of that nature. That's what's occurring here. Am I on mute? Hold on. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. I think we need to, well, thank you for telling Crystal to refresh because I don't think she'd hear me saying it. So thank you guys in the chat. My training on gangs in general and how leadership in the gangs can run things and demand respect from the members of the gang and will pay members of the gang to do things and things of that nature. That's what's occurring here. Anything else about Mr. Williams to add to your answer before that he does things, and I know you said YSL, to further the gang's activities other than what you said? Here we go. Answer from Viverito. I mean, you've seen the interview with KC, Kenneth Copeland, where he said, and I know it was harped upon in the wiretap motion, like, I could have forced him to wear a wire. So for asserting that he was truthful and that he would have worn a wire to trip up or get Mr. Williams in trouble, then we need to take what he says at face value, that he's the leader of the gang and that he could have done that. He could have gotten Mr. Williams on the phone, or he could have done things like that. This is it, guys. This is the full circle. The interview with KC, where Viverito's sitting there. I forget who else. I think it was Dennis in the room at the same time. He says I would have worn a wire. So Viverito goes, oh, he's our informant now. He's telling the truth. This is how we've determined that he's credible. He said he would wear a wire. We didn't actually try to put a wire on him. Take him up on that offer. Just had Kenneth Copeland say he would wear a wire. So that's how we determined it was true that Jeffrey Williams was the leader of the gang. Because Kenneth Copeland, we could have asked him to wear a wire, even though we didn't. So Steele, what information do you have to render this opinion that is outside of obtaining it for the prosecution of this case? Can you rephrase your question? I'm not sure. If you don't know this, just say I don't know. Do you know what testimonial means under the law? Miss Love, Your Honor, I object. The court, I'll sustain the objection. Mr. Steele, okay. So basically, testimony would be this part where she's saying, I'm saying it's true that he's the leader. We're getting testimony rather than... I don't really quite know how to explain it. This is where my layperson blends into everything I've tried to learn. But Steele is like, all right, you've had some practice. Do you understand what it means when something's testimonial? But Steele switches his question. The interviews of people who've been arrested. You are relying on that. Answer. I'm relying on several things. My training, and I'm also relying on several things. Whether it be phone extractions, jail calls, a wiretap, things that have proven true. When Kenneth Copeland tells me he won't get on the phone, it has to be FaceTime only because you can't intercept it. So KC tells Viverito, Jeffrey Williams won't get on the phone. It has to be FaceTime only because you can't intercept it. And somebody that's close to him gets called on the wiretap on a regular phone. And they say, don't you dare call me on a regular phone. Are you crazy? Call me back on FaceTime. That is something that corroborates something. So when KC tells me a little bit of truth. So when I talk about corroborating information, it's not just one piece of information. When I look in a phone dump and somebody is saying, Mr. Williams is saying, do this or somebody's going to die. She keeps saying this quote, and this is not the quote. And when the person is fearful in the days after, are you trying to have something done to me? Tell me now. Or when they are doing bad things and they need a lawyer paid for, and they come to Mr. Williams and say, cash out my lawyer right now, I need him paid. And then Steele says, besides your work as an investigator on this case and looking at this evidence that you're talking about, what methodology is there that separates that from just the regular case where the investigator says, here's what I did, here's the wiretap, here's the interview with Kenneth Copeland, or Kenneth Copeland testifies and gets impeached? What do you bring in that is expertise as an expert witness, not a fact witness? She says, knowing how to pinpoint the players in the organization to the point. Like I said earlier, even the defendants on the case, if you listen to the wiretap, talk about how much I know. But that's evidence in the case. Viverito, you're asking me for evidence? Steele, I'm asking you, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. No, if I did, I apologize. Well, no, Mr. Steele, go ahead, because I'm clearly trying to avoid your question. Because what's happening here is Steele says, yeah, they might be talking about how much you know, but they're not saying how much you know that's truthful. They might be referring to how much has been turned over to you in discovery that you've looked at. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying that the accusations are true. And she's either dancing around the question or doesn't get that Brian Steele's saying, they're saying that you know about evidence in the case. So, but she says, I'm just trying to understand what information, this is Steele, sorry. I'm just trying to understand what information, you said you're training. What did you get besides, I'm heavily invested in this case, as am I. So we can disagree, but my question is, the court, she didn't testify about that, Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele, you're investigating the case. If you just give that information to a jury, why do they need your expertise? I'm asking you if you can answer that question for me. Viverito, because they might see him as a music artist and not understand the gang component to this. They need somebody to break down how it all comes together. Like earlier when you asked me about the music and the gang, and I explained to you, the money from the music is used to give money to the members of the gang. But they didn't look at the financials. Steele, okay, maybe this is for the court. I may stop, but why is this different than a closing argument? Miss Love, Your Honor, I object to that. The court, I'll sustain the objection. Mr. Steele, okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Honor. The court, you're welcome, sir. Anything else, Miss Love? Miss Love, no, Your Honor, the court. So Viverito, thank you very much. And then she ends up getting, I think in January is when we have the order. Glanville approves her as an expert witness on this subject matter. So there is that, you guys. A whole time.